So you started off your working career as a writer in a men's fashion magazine. How did
Yes.
you go from that to singing?
Actually, when I was already in college, my friend and I had already started a band, but I never considered music as a viable career option. So when I graduated, I just pursued a job in what I studied, and at the same time was still playing music and all that. And how I finally made the decision to quit is a really important, I would say, spiritual calling that
Whoa,
happened
what do you mean
to
by that?
me. So I belong to a spiritual path called Ekankar. And in 2009, I went to this worldwide seminar that was being held in Minnesota, America. And on that same event, I was invited to be on a panel where they wanted young people to interview older folks who've been on a path for a long time.
Mhm.
So I was joking to my friend, oh, that's easy. I'm a journalist. This is my line of work, I can do this so easily. And I joked and said, like, does this mean I can quit my job now? I was like,
Wow.
ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
And then I did the thing. I came back home. And so before I left, there was a bus service that picked me up directly in front of where I was staying and would drop me directly in front of my office for 1 ringgit.
Okay.
Okay. So I came back the next day. I sat at the bus stop waiting for the bus to get to work. I waited for an hour and a half. There was no
Wow.
bus.
It's a
And I had to take a
sign.
cab that cost 10 ringgit
Ooh.
to
Right.
go to work. And then I found out that in the 2 weeks that I was gone, they actually discontinued the bus service.
Wow.
Oh, that was a
Right?
clear sign.
Yeah. But I don't do like single signs because sometimes you can read too much and do it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then my office building was going through renovation at the time as well, dusty and all that. And we all know renovation signifies change.
Mhm.
But I still wasn't like ready to take the plunge. And then one night I had a dream that I handed in my resignation letter. The next morning I woke up, I typed it in, I handed it in, and that was
The
it.
cosmos is telling you, look, how many more signs do we need to give you,
That'd be
man?
true. Damn greedy.
I know. So insistent on all these signs, multiple signs.
Three's the charm, guys. Three's the charm.
Yeah, Still a Soul sang that. Three
Yeah,
is a
that's true,
lucky
yeah.
number. Okay. Wow. So fantastic. I mean, how long from when you arrived back home to going through bus discontinuation, office renovation to dream to you actually handing in your resignation?
In about a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it tough though? Was it like one of those, ooh, I don't know whether I'm doing the right thing?
No, it wasn't at all, because it just felt like, okay, I can't deny the signs anymore. They're all telling me the same thing. And also, I think what was holding me back and what holds a lot of people back is the fear of the unknown. Right, here I had a regular job, a regular salary. And when you go into the arts, especially in Malaysia, like if you're not doing mainstream music, it's tough, and somehow I'm doing English music, which is already a smaller market in a small. So
Yeah.
I was just afraid, and then I told myself, at that time I was 27 years old. I said, like, I'm young now with no like gigantic financial or family commitments. If I don't do this now, when am I gonna do it? Once I handed it in, it was like a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and yeah.
So, that you talked about sort of, I guess one of the bigger fears going into the music industry, like full on as an artist. What others were kind of there that were kind of holding you back that perhaps you hadn't realized until you stepped across the line to the other side?
There was another bigger fear, because at that time I quit when I still had a band, right? I quit in December 2009, and within 6 months, my bandmate migrated to Singapore. And in our collaboration, I always wrote the lyrics, contributed to melody, and she always did a composition. So I didn't know how to write songs. So for that to happen, I kind of went into like a funk for a while of not like suddenly bereft. Suddenly I quit it to do this, and now this doesn't exist anymore.
My left arm is
Wow.
gone, right?
Yeah, but music to me is such, like I said, it's a spiritual calling for me, and other things continued to happen that pushed me to take that step to become a solo artist and try my hand at writing my own songs, and it just had to be like, I can't care if no one likes my shit. You know, I just have to try. I just have to try.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during those times when you know, seemingly the sky was falling, you know, your bandmate had moved to Singapore, and as JD put it, you know, your right arm's gone, sort of thing. How did you keep yourself motivated and in a sort of frame of mind that allowed you to kind of, I don't know, look to the future?
Keep chugging on.
Yeah.
I think I didn't for the first couple of months. I was just like crashing, like being depressed and with a touch of self-pity in there, I'm sure. But like I said, the following year, I went back to the seminar. And this time I was invited to perform at the temple. And we have a series, like a different spiritual exercises that we can try that helps us with specific situations. And there was one spiritual exercise that was about talking about how you imagine the divine spirit entering your body as golden musical notes, and each note corresponds to a different sound. So I kind of modified that spiritual exercise to be when I was performing, those notes would come out of my body too, and reach the audience. And when I got on stage and did that performance, I kind of had like an out of body experience of sorts, where I was singing, but I was also watching myself singing. And it felt like I was singing for the very first time in my life. And then later, much later, I had two different people who don't know each other tell me separately that they actually saw like light and energy coming out of my body, you know, to reach them. And at that same seminar, there was a fellow musician. He's a teacher at Juilliard School of Music in New York, and he's played with the biggest names you've ever thought of, like Dizzy Gillespie, you know, the Rosie O'Donnell show and all that. And he did a workshop for musicians that were in a spiritual path. And he said, if you're thinking right now that you're not good enough for whatever reason, whether you're not educated enough, whether your technique is not great, blah, 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 he said, just stop right there and remember that as long as you're doing it with love, you are good enough. And you know, with me, things don't happen 1, 2, it always has to happen in threes, right? So at that same seminar, I was volunteering for a children's workshop for kids like between 5 to 8 years old. And we were playing an activity where you had to throw yarn at each other, and then it made a web to see how we're connected. But before we could unravel, collect back the yarn, the kids started flying around and we're getting tangled, and it was a real health hazard. And the adults were scrambling around in the room, not knowing what to do. And I out of desperation, I suddenly just started singing this song that we were going to teach them later anyway. I started singing, and I could almost feel like the energy, like a wave coming in the room and kind of touching the kids, and they all became quiet. And after these 3 experiences, I was just like, girl, you cannot not do this. Like, I keep being, like you said, the messages are being shoved in my face. So after that, I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna try and write my own songs and just do it. And luckily for me, you know, it all worked out.
Luckily for all of us who get to listen to it.
Music,
yeah, exactly. So, you know, in all this sort of journey that you've been on, what's been the biggest challenge for you?
Ooh, I think balance. You know, as much as I have like this higher purpose that I'm conscious of like using music as my way of being an instrument of love in this world, I still need to make music successful, my music successful.
Right, okay.
So we're struggling between that balance of always keeping in mind that I'm doing this for an important reason, and at the same time not getting too caught up in like the conventional markers of success while still pursuing them to keep myself sustainable. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There was a balance between commerce and a love for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you need to eat.
Sustainable economics.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there ain't nothing wrong with earning money.
I love money.
You know,
Yeah.
I think the sort of romantic idea of the sort of struggling artist, and you're only really sort of a true artist if you sort of disregard the money part of it, is
No, yeah.
if you know, it's a fallacy, and it
People
doesn't
say
have to be.
money is the
is.
root of all evil. Have never been super poor before. That's the reality of it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. Talking about money then leads me on to, I suppose, the space of a year that I think was hard for all of us.
Mm.
How did the pandemic and subsequent lockdowns, in plural, affect you, affect your work, affect your band?
I was actually in South Africa at the time when the pandemic hit and the lockdown happened. And I think the first thing that came to my mind was I said, thank freaking goodness I had diversified my income a long time ago. So I think throughout this process of it was exactly 10 years ago that I decided to become a solo artist. And I think there was a space of maybe 2 years in between this decade that I was surviving solely on music. But then, you know, the pressure of that affected my creativity. You know,
Okay.
and so I decided to use the other skills that I had to get like little part-time jobs, freelance jobs that were not, some were music related, some were not, that would give me a sort of semi-regular income. And I think that was the best decision I've ever made, because those jobs, which I do enjoy in varying degrees, allowed me to pay my bills and took the pressure off of me having to survive solely through my art. And that gave me so much freedom and creativity, and like it kept my enthusiasm for my music alive. You know, like I've been doing this for 16 years, and I can tell you I'm still as excited today as I was when I first started. I think I'm even more excited today compared to when I was much younger, you know, about what I'm doing. And so when the pandemic hit, I was really fortunate that I had those, you know, freelance jobs to keep me going, and that saved my life. And at the same time, that still allowed me to make music, and Alive was born completely of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So what kind of other jobs are you doing then that you absolutely feel passionate and love too at the same time? That kind of fill your creative gap, as well as, you know, help you as a
The financial
songwriter.
gap as well.
Yeah, that too.
So there is a music museum in Penang called the Penang House of Music. They showcase Penang popular music from the 1930s onwards. They have a gigantic archive full of like historical documents,
Wow.
like,
Where?
you know, vinyls.
Amazing.
It's in Komta.
Really? There's
Yes,
things in Komtan. I'm sorry.
I know,
didn't pick it up.
I know. Like if you've never heard of it before and you're listening right now, just like Google Penang House of Music, and I say it is the only outfit of its kind in the country that is doing this really important job of preserving and documenting our history, you know. And I was involved in the research when they were writing the book that came before the gallery, and right now I handle their social media.
Oh,
Brilliant.
right. Okay.
Yes. And I'm also managing an artist. My friend is an illustrator, and she also creates her own oracle cards, and she does tarot readings. And
Oh,
so I manage
beautiful.
all her bookings, because as much as I'm creative, I'm also like really organized.
Hey,
So
Kate, you know, you can actually be a creative organizer. I mean, like people think creative is just for the arts. Actually, it's not. You could be a creative accountant. We all would love to know much
That's
more
a whole,
creative
being a
accountant.
creative accountant is a whole different thing.
Okay, maybe that came out the wrong way, but I think it's like the idea of creativity only belonging in the arts is a false
Yeah,
one
I
as
think what you
well.
mean is like you think people who are very organized, they always have to be in suits and whatnot, and they're not artistic, but you can be both.
But you're also
yeah,
creative in how you create structure,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You
true.
know,
Yeah.
so
yes,
this
yes.
form, and that form is creative. Anyway, I digress. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm managing this friend of mine, and it works out perfectly well for both of us. She's like creative chaos, and I'm creative organized. So I
Right.
love getting her business life in order. And I also do freelance writing on the side, you know,
You can't let that go,
freelance
right?
voiceover jobs. No, I mean, it's my skill. Why not
Yeah.
utilize it?
True.
And as of last year and the year before, I also taught vocals at a local university.
Oh,
Wait,
brilliant.
you're here in KL though?
Yes, yes,
Right?
I am.
No, yeah. So the Penang thing, you still go back once in a while, or you?
My family is from Penang.
You're
So
from Penang, yeah.
yeah, my family still lives there. And before the pandemic, yes, I would go back quite often.
Right.
Mm.
But now for the museum, you're just kind of working from home for them.
Well, social media you can do from anywhere.
Right. Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
I love the fact that actually part of that, the social media, is something you need for your business, but you're learning how to do it and do it really well and see the results. They're like your job is like your beta testing for your own work, you know.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the music scene. What do you think is missing in our local music scene? And what do you think local musicians, for example, could do to improve their performances?
I think the main missing ingredient is a lack of infrastructure and an ecosystem. I think, like, if we're being completely honest here, it
Mm,
wasn't until early this year that Hits, LITE, and Mix started playing local English songs on regular rotation,
mm,
right?
mm,
And a lot of people are surprised to know that. And I think we are completely segregated by language.
yeah.
Like, why can't our local media just support Malaysian artists in general? Why can't
Mm,
we just support each other, regardless whether you're singing in Malay, in English, in Mandarin, in Tamil, in Kadazan or Iban or whatever? Why can't we just celebrate our Malaysianness and this diversity that makes us so great? Lack of like hard infrastructure and support is one of the biggest things. I feel as personally as an artist that's been doing this, for like a decade and a half. And when I talk to older musicians, the same issues that plagued them back then are still the same issues that plague us today.